Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We would also appreciate it if you could give us a positive rating and review, as it will help others to learn about autism stories. On today's episode, Russ Coleman joins us to discuss accessibility in art and creating 1 million drawings over the next 5 years. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Russ, thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories.
It's a pleasure, Doug. Thanks very much for inviting me.
So I'd like to start our conversation, like I do many of these conversations, by learning, where does your story in the autistic community begin?
It's a strange one because I've just hit 60 years old and I didn't get a diagnosis until 8 months ago for the autism. And so I've kind of struggled all my life in ignorance, really. And it's not been blissful ignorance either. It's been one of those things that, having that diagnosis, I'm casting my eyes back through a different lens, through that lens of autism, makes so much sense of the sort of trials and struggles that I've had in life. So my journey to actually get the diagnosis was through my daughter suffering, and she was suffering with a lot of trauma. Every time she saw a professional, they asked if she had autism because she presented in that kind of manner. And I did a lot of research on her behalf and realised that there was that genetic element and that all those traits described me, you know, and that had been my life. So all those struggles, and now I cast my mind back as far as I can, and I can see the masking, the anxiety, the acute anxiety, particularly, confusion mainly up until my teens, and then really, really anxious all the way through my teens, and on the classic kind of self-medicating through alcohol, having to, stop drinking. You know, I joined 12-step fellowships when I was 26, because that, the drinking and drugs and all that behaviour had really got a hold of me, and I had to address that. So for the next 30 odd years, I had some kind of guidelines and handrails for behaviour, but it was always masking. Now I look back, it's kind of complete masking, and that trying to understand the world before I could even figure out who I was. And the world was a weird and wonderful place, It's not all a veil of tears, but, it's been a constant kind of journey and a search for, there was always something at the core of my being, or my soul, or whatever you'd like to call it, that just felt like there is something else. This isn't the whole story. And then I ended up, getting referred through it. In the UK, we have a slightly different system where we have the NHS. I got referred through that. That can take up to 5 years at the moment from referral because it's on the NHS, you don't pay. But then now there's a shortcut system where private healthcare take on duties of public health, and you can get recommended through that. So that system was really quick. That was about 3 months.
Now, from my understanding, you're a regular listener to Autism Stories, so thank you for that, Russ. I appreciate that.
No, that's great.
Have there been maybe, any episodes in particular that you've most kind of connected with?
I kind of connected with so many of them. I mean, a lot of the ones I heard were people getting a diagnosis in the mid-20s. And the one I found really interesting was Chinhee Park.
Yes.
The Clairvoyant Woman, which, I do wonder about that kind of stuff because I've always had a very prosaic outlook on life, very logical. I've always struggled with allegory and all those kind of things, except biblical ones for some reason. I got all those. But and that was quite interesting, that kind of listening to the still small voice, I think, was interesting. I find that, everybody's journey is quite fascinating. And that's what I'm finding. There's these sort of commonalities, but everybody's story seems a bit different.
Yes, we're a diverse group of people, and I think that's one of the things that I think you can hear when you listen to a lot of our stories. So you're an artist and have set forth on a very ambitious project, I would say. That's to create 1 million unique drawings over the next 5 years. And
that's right, yeah. Yeah, I got kicked off on that, and it's been a long-term itch, if you like, that's been that I've been wanting to scratch. And now I have this dual diagnosis of autism and ADHD. I can see where that fits right in there, So the autistic side of me. I carve stone, I draw, and the stone is a very good one for the stimming. It kind of, I get in the flow or in the zone, and I can carve. I also get the rumination going all the time. I can be stuck on a loop for hours, but that's okay. It seems that seems fine. And the million drawings, they are all unique, so that kind of suits the sort of ADHD side of me, because I do them in a set of 1,000 at a time. They take about 2 hours to do 1,000, so they're only a few seconds each drawing, and I would consider a drawing, it's like mark making. You put a mark on a piece of paper, then you do a counter mark, and all of a sudden you have the sum of something much more than 2 marks on a paper. You've got the paper, you've got the mark, the spaces in between. So yeah, I do those at speed, and it's kind of, it fulfills all sides of me.
This project has been on your mind for quite some time, I understand, as I believe it's taken you 10 years to launch the project, which I think is a very important part of this story, in the sense that I've known some wonderful artists, but it's been very difficult for them to start projects. So can you tell us a little bit about the process for you, why you didn't give up on this project a decade later?
It came off the back of a very large public art. It came off the back of a large public artwork I did in Blackpool called the Comedy Cap, which is 2,500 square meters. So you times that by 3.5 square feet, I think, or 9.5 square feet. And that was a lot of jokes, comedy. It was a complete sort of celebration of British comedy. Now, there was 180,000 individual granite letters set in white concrete that you read. It takes you more than a day to read the whole thing. And it's a public plaza. I used to be a monumental mason, so I learned to hand carve letters in headstones, gravestones. So I always do this kind of multiple thing, and I deal logistically with a lot of, it's kind of not big numbers, but when you do 180,000 letters, the logistics of keeping an eye on those is pretty phenomenal. So I was always thinking, well, what would be one of the next big things to do? And I was looking at a way of doing a project that served not just myself. I wanted it to be kind of antithesis of what was going on in the art world, particularly in Britain. It was the same in in America, mainly New York and London, became this very commodified, branded, commercial sort of thing, and I wanted it to be the opposite of that. I wanted it to be a very large number. So, the idea is you make 1 million things, you sell them for $1 a piece, you make $1 million. It was along those lines, but it was the antithesis of me making an artwork and copying it 1 million times. It was to be something different. And I had the wherewithal then, but in my imagination, I thought I was going to do it in a year. I had this very heroic kind of thing going on at the time, which, nobody needs heroes all the time. They're good in a certain situation, but not in peacetime. And so, and it did just take a long, long time for me to gather the courage, really, and the self-belief. What I do has value, and the need being know what the value, and I got to do it. Because I've always been, the part of the autism is that I've always second-guessed myself. I've always kind of wondered why, and I've always had to have a grand narrative for some reason. And now that's kind of started to fall away since the diagnosis. I believe it's part of the unmasking thing, but I'm getting to know myself a lot more.
Now, you mentioned a minute or two ago about each work of art being sold for like $1 or something, like less than a cup of coffee. So that makes me think.
Yes.
That makes me think about accessibility, because art can be, very expensive, and as a result, it's not as accessible to a lot of people. How do you look at art in the sense of accessibility? Are there some other ways besides cost that you think the art world can take some great strides to improve accessibility?
There was a great movement in Britain in the 60s, which was more like a community art movement. So, you get grand theatre produced in housing estates or like projects, I believe, I think it's over there. So it was of the people, by the people. And I just thought, well, if I could sell to 1 million people a cheap piece of art for less than the price of a cup of coffee, it does make it accessible. You've got an original art, you're buying into that story of I'm one of this community of 1 million people, and it was, I believe everybody's creative, and nearly everybody has a creative acting, whether it's cooking, whether it's homemaking, whether it's construction or whatever. The creative act is in everybody, and it's just not celebrated in the same way because it doesn't have the commercial value, and the sort of there's a lot of gatekeepers in the art world, that would say this is good, this is bad.
So when I think of 1 million drawings, I think of doing something over and over and over and over again. So. Which makes me think about stimming and regulation. How do you look at art as a way to regulate yourself, whether you're selling drawings or not?
I find it an incredibly centering, grounding activity to make art, whichever way you do it. I spent time as a technician in an art studio, people with mental health problems. And one of the most popular classes and training resource for people. And one of the most popular classes was ceramics. So to actually get your fingers in clay, so you're grounding yourself, you are literally putting your fingers in the earth. And it was an incredibly calming, grounding thing. And I find, whether I'm working with a piece of stone, I don't use stone as a medium, like a block of stone that I'm going to carve a figure out of. It's more like I take a piece of stone and it's a conversation the stone reveals itself to me, and it's more like giving a boulder a glow up. It's on a journey. It's been on a journey for millions. Some of the pieces I do are billions of years old. So my little intervention with it is it's a blip in its lifetime. So I love that idea of deep time as well. That's always been a very inspiring but very centering thing as well. It gives me a perspective.
I'm interested about perspective in the sense that I've talked with a lot of people, and I see a lot of people on social media where they talk about learning about their autism in their 20s and in their 30s, and the trauma that they feel around not learning about their autism earlier in life. I'm wondering about your perspective being 60, how you kind of approach that.
I've had quite a period of grief, to tell you the truth. There's been a lot of grief and loss, and the loss is the opportunities, I think. I like many people I know that are neurodiverse, that is this kind of early success in anything that they turn themselves to, so that kind of area of interest. Whatever I do, I seem to get early success, but then all the imposter syndrome, the PDA and everything else just kind of pulls the carpet from underneath me, pulls the rug from underneath me. And, so there has been that period of grief, and then learning what is me at the core and what was masking, and that's an ongoing journey, and that's why it's a revelation to me. So I've survived, for 60 years. It's been a survival thing. As I say, it's always been a search. And I look at these kind of Venn diagrams where you get these intersections of autistic traits, ADHD traits, dyslexia, I'm dyslexic as well. And it feels like it's all one big circle and all different layers to me. And I've been peeling away the layers for years and years and years. I get nearly to the core. Kind of those Venn diagrams always feel to me, when I put my Venn diagram together, it's more like layers of an onion, rings on a tree. And there is that sort of essential me at the centre. And one of the last layers to pull away in there and discover has been this autism and ADHD, this neurodiversity. And, I kind of own all that now, because I was put forward for a dual diagnosis. I particularly wanted the ADHD diagnosis, just to make sure that's what it was, all this strange behaviour, or what I felt was odd behaviour or character defects or whatever, because I've grown out of that generation where autism was Rain Man. It was kind of, it was seen as this, it was either hidden, or if it was visible, it was highly visible, and it wasn't seen as normal, well, it was frowned on. So when I got the autism assessment first, I was a bit disappointed. There was almost like shame, guilt attached to that, which I seen Gen Z that over the years that these things are no longer hidden and no longer dark secrets. It's just what we are. Like I say, it's all revelation, and I'm learning all the time, and the sadness from it is gone. That's it's brave new world.
And lastly, Russ, how can our listeners learn about you and purchase your art beyond this interview?
I'm on TikTok. I believe it's Russ Coleman Art. There's Russ Coleman Stone is the website, and on there is the Drawn project as well. And I'm just in the process of, because the Drawn project is such a big project, it's all about logistics, so I'm rejigging the whole thing and You know, I've done a trial period. You know, we've done the proof. It does work. So yeah, that's where you'll find me. I think I'm on Instagram as well, but I have an assistant for all that kind of thing. I'm a body double, which is great. You know, I'm learning all these things, externalize, you know, the executive functioning and all that kind of thing. You know, these are the great gifts of knowledge. You know, that I don't have to struggle by myself. Get somebody else to help.
Well, I definitely encourage people to check that out because your art is very impressive. And yeah, absolutely. And it was a pleasure to get to know you today, Russ. And hopefully you'll continue to listen to Autism Stories.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big fan now. I'm learning a lot.
Thanks so much to Russ for the conversation. To learn more about Russ, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. We always love hearing from you and would especially love to hear from you relating to this episode on how would you like to see the art world become more accessible for autistic artists. Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to lead self-directed, purpose-driven lives through customized life coaching and community groups. Our distinct approach prioritizes each client's unique goals and preferences, fostering a sense of agency and promoting self-advocacy. Coaches work collaboratively with clients to develop personalized strategies and tools that can help with executive functioning, emotional regulation, relationship building, stress management, and much more. We also support parents and partners of autistic individuals by providing insights and guidance to bridge communication gaps and nurture mutual understanding. With our accessible remote services, individuals from any location can receive the assistance and mentoring they need. Join us today to experience judgment-free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.